You've heard the story of Moses parting the Red Sea. You've pictured an entire nation walking between two towering walls of water. But almost nobody talks about what came after that miraculous crossing. 40 years. 40 years of wandering through a merciless desert, under a blazing sun by day and bitter cold by night. An entire generation was born, lived, and died in those sands, never once setting foot in the land God had promised them. And the reason behind it changed everything. But the most staggering detail of this story isn't the 40 years themselves. It's that Moses, the man who stood before Egypt's most powerful Pharaoh, who raised his staff and split the sea, who climbed a mountain and spoke with God face to face, never set foot in the promised land. He saw it from a distance. From the top of a mountain. And he died there, alone, gazing at a destiny that would never be his. Moses, the greatest leader Israel ever knew, was turned away by God himself. What could possibly be serious enough for God to deny his most faithful servant the reward of a lifetime of obedience? What happened during those 40 years that turned an 11-day journey into a 4-decade sentence? And why did an entire generation have to die in the desert so another could finally enter? Today, we walk through every step of those 40 years. From Mount Sinai to the banks of the Jordan River. From triumph to tragedy. From the promise to the punishment. To understand the 40 years in the desert, we need to go back to the exact moment everything began. 3 months after crossing the Red Sea, the people of Israel arrived at the foot of a mountain that would change human history forever. Mount Sinai. A place where the earth shook violently, where lightning split the sky without pause, where a dense dark cloud covered the summit, and from inside it, the voice of God thundered with a force that made every man, woman, and child tremble with terror. Exodus chapter 19 describes the scene as utterly terrifying. Mount Sinai was covered in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed upward like smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain trembled with tremendous force. The sound of a trumpet grew louder and louder, filling the desert air. God told Moses to climb to the very top. No one else could touch the mountain, under penalty of death. Moses climbed alone, entering the dark cloud, stepping into the direct presence of the Creator of the universe. There at the summit of that mountain of fire and smoke, God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. Written by God's own finger on 2 stone tablets. Not just rules, the foundation of a covenant between the Creator and the people he had chosen. Do not murder. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Love the Lord your God above all. Words that would echo for millennia and form the bedrock of entire civilizations. But Moses stayed on that mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. 40 days. And down in the camp at the base of the mountain, the people's patience ran out. They stared at the cloud-covered summit and watched for Moses, day after day, week after week. Fear slowly turned to doubt. Doubt turned to despair. Despair turned to rebellion. They surrounded Aaron, Moses' older brother, and made a demand that would change everything. Make us gods to go before us. For this Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what has become of him. Aaron, instead of resisting, gave in. He asked the people to bring their gold earrings, melted them down, and shaped a golden calf with a tool. Then he spoke the words that sealed the disaster, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." They built an altar before the calf, declared a festival, and the next morning the people rose to eat, drink, and give themselves to idolatry. All while God's voice was still echoing from the mountaintop above them. High on Sinai, God told Moses what was happening below. Your people have corrupted themselves. They have turned quickly from the path I commanded them. They made a golden calf, bowed before it, and declared, "These are your gods." And then came the most terrifying words Moses had ever heard. God said, "Let me alone, that my anger may burn against them and I may consume them." He would build a great nation from Moses alone. God was ready to wipe out all of Israel on the spot. Moses did something extraordinary. Rather than accepting the offer to become the father of a new nation, he interceded for the people. He pleaded with God to remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to honor the promises made to their forefathers. And the Lord relented. Moses descended carrying the 2 stone tablets. But when he reached the camp and saw the golden calf and the dancing, his anger burned so intensely he hurled the tablets down and shattered them at the base of the mountain. Moses burned the golden calf, ground it into powder, scattered it on the water, and made the people drink it. Then he called out for anyone who was on the Lord's side. The Levites responded. That day, by Moses' command, 3,000 men were killed by the Levite swords. The price of idolatry was paid in blood. But in his mercy, God did not destroy the nation. He gave them a second chance. Moses climbed the mountain again and God wrote the commandments on new stone tablets. With the new tablets came a new beginning. God commanded the construction of the tabernacle, a sacred tent that would be the center of his presence among the people. Lined with gold on the inside, covered with skins on the outside, with the Ark of the Covenant at its heart, containing the law tablets and Aaron's staff. When the tabernacle was complete, the glory of God descended as a cloud and filled it with such intensity that even Moses could not enter. God now dwelt among his chosen people. God's cloud guided the people. When the cloud lifted from the tabernacle, Israel marched. When the cloud settled, Israel camped. A pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. Every morning, manna fell from the sky, a white, sweet food that sustained the entire nation. God provided water, food, direction, and protection. Everything was in place for the journey from Egypt to Canaan to take just 11 days. 11 days of marching. But what should have taken days would take 40 years. 2 years after leaving Egypt, Israel arrived at Kadesh Barnea, the gateway to the Promised Land. God told Moses to send 12 spies, 1 leader from each tribe, to explore the land of Canaan for 40 days. These were chosen, courageous men. Among them were Joshua, from the tribe of Ephraim, and Caleb, from the tribe of Judah. The 12 set out northward, crossed the desert of Zin, moved up through the Negev, and reached Hebron, one of the oldest cities in the ancient world. What they found confirmed every promise God had ever made. The land truly flowed with milk and honey. The fields were fertile, the vegetation lush, and the fruit grew to sizes that seemed impossible. As proof, they cut a single cluster of grapes in the valley of Eshcol so enormous and heavy that 2 men had to carry it on a pole between their shoulders. 1 cluster of grapes. They also brought pomegranates and figs. The land was everything God had promised, and more. After 40 days of exploration, the 12 spies returned to camp. The entire assembly gathered to hear the report. And the 10 spies began to speak. The land is good, yes. But the cities are enormous and fortified. The people are giants, descendants of Anak. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and that's how we must have appeared to them. Fear dominated every word. The greatness of the land was swallowed by the size of the obstacles. The people listened with growing terror. Caleb tried to silence the crowd. He stood up and declared with conviction, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." But the 10 spies spoke louder. "We cannot attack those people, they are stronger than we are." And they spread a bad report among the Israelites, saying the land devours its inhabitants and all the men there are of great size. Joshua tore his clothes. Caleb pleaded for courage. But it was already too late. The damage was done. That night, the entire assembly lifted their voices and wept. The weeping turned to grumbling. The grumbling turned to outright revolt. They said to one another, "If only we had died in Egypt. Or in this desert. Why is God bringing us to this land only to fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better to go back to Egypt?" And they began choosing a new leader to return, back to the chains. Back to slavery. They rejected God completely. Joshua and Caleb tore their clothes before the entire assembly and cried out, the land we explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land and give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of that land. Their protection is gone, and the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid." But the people refused to listen. They talked about stoning Joshua and Caleb. Then the glory of the Lord appeared at the tabernacle. God spoke to Moses with an indignation that shook the desert. "How long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, despite all the signs I have performed among them?" He had parted the Red Sea, sent plagues on Egypt, rained bread from heaven and drawn water from a rock. And still, at the first real test of faith, the people chose fear. They chose doubt. They chose rebellion. The divine verdict that followed was proportional to the gravity of their defiance. The sentence was devastating. God declared, "For 40 years, 1 year for each of the 40 days you explored the land, you will suffer the consequences of your sins. Not one man or woman above 20 years old who had grumbled against God would enter the promised land. Every single one of them would die in the desert. Their bodies scattered across the wilderness over 4 long decades. Only 2 men from that entire generation would be spared: Joshua and Caleb. No one else." The people heard the verdict and, in a burst of late regret, decided to go up and take Canaan on their own. Moses warned them, "Do not go, the Lord is not with you." They ignored him. They climbed to the hilltop without the Ark of the Covenant, without God's presence, without divine authorization. And the Amalekites and Canaanites came down and crushed them, driving them back all the way to Hormah. Disobedience without God's covering is nothing but arrogance in disguise. And so the 40 years began. Years of wandering without a fixed destination. Years of daily funerals. Each morning brought the certainty that someone else wouldn't wake up. The generation that had witnessed Egypt's plagues, crossed the sea on dry ground, and heard God's voice at Sinai, condemned to die in sand and stone. But the troubles didn't end with the sentence. A rebellion rose from within the people itself, a direct challenge to Moses, to Aaron, and to God. The rebel's name was Korah. Korah was a Levite, a cousin of Moses and Aaron, and a man of considerable standing in the community. But he wanted more. He gathered 250 respected leaders and publicly confronted Moses. "Enough," he said. "The whole community is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among all of them. Why do you set yourselves above his assembly?" The accusation was plain: Moses and Aaron had seized authority that wasn't theirs. Open revolt against the divine order. Moses fell face down. Then he rose and said, "Tomorrow the Lord will show who belongs to him and who is holy." He ordered Korah and his followers to bring censers the following day. When the day came, the whole assembly gathered to watch. Korah, Dathan, and Abiram stood before their tents with their families. Moses said to the crowd, "Move back from the tents of these men. If the Lord brings about something new, if the ground opens and swallows them alive, you will know they despise the Lord." The moment Moses finished speaking, the ground beneath Korah, Dathan, and Abiram split open. The earth tore like old cloth and swallowed the 3 men alive, along with their families, their tents, and everything they owned. They went down into the pit and the earth closed over them. A scream of horror swept across the camp. The people fled in every direction, afraid the ground would take them too. And fire came down from the sky and consumed the 250 men offering incense. Divine justice was immediate. But not even the ground splitting open or fire falling from heaven taught the people their lesson. The very next day, the entire assembly grumbled against Moses and Aaron, "You have killed the Lord's people." A plague broke out in the camp. Aaron grabbed his censer, lit incense, and ran into the assembly, standing between the dead and the living, interceding before God. The plague stopped. But 14,700 people had already died. Rebellion always demanded blood. The years passed in the desert. 37 years of silent marching, constant funerals, a generation slowly disappearing into the sands of Sinai. Then they arrived at Kadesh again. And Miriam, Moses' older sister, the woman who placed baby Moses in a basket on the Nile, who sang and danced after crossing the Red Sea, died there and was buried at Kadesh. The morning had barely begun when the people started complaining once more. This time, about water. The assembly turned on Moses and Aaron. "Why did you bring us into this desert to die here with our livestock?" God gave Moses an instruction with absolute clarity: take the staff, gather the assembly, and speak to the rock before their eyes. Speak to the rock. Don't strike it. Don't hit it. Just speak. And the rock would give enough water for all the people and all their animals. The command was simple. But Moses did not follow it. Moses gathered the people before the rock. But instead of speaking to it as God had commanded, he raised his staff and shouted, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" And he struck the rock twice. Water gushed out in abundance. Everyone drank. But God looked at Moses and spoke words that shattered the heart of Israel's greatest leader. "Because you did not trust me enough to honor me as holy before the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." Moses' sin wasn't simply striking the rock instead of speaking to it. It was claiming for himself the glory that belonged to God alone. "Must we bring you water?" As if the miracle came from him and Aaron, not from the Creator. In one flash of frustration, after decades of unwavering faithfulness, Moses failed to honor God before the people. The punishment matched the weight of the calling. The greater the assignment, the greater the expectation. Moses would see the promised land, but never touch it with his own feet. Shortly after Meribah, God called Aaron to Mount Hor. Moses, Aaron, and Eleazar, Aaron's son, climbed together before the whole congregation. At the summit, Moses removed the priestly garments from Aaron and placed them on Eleazar. The transfer of the priesthood happened in silence, under the open desert sky. Aaron died on the mountaintop. The first high priest of Israel, the man who had stood beside Moses from the very beginning, passed before ever seeing the promise fulfilled. With Aaron's death, the people fell into despair again. They journeyed around Edom by the Red Sea road, and the people grew impatient along the way. They spoke against God and against Moses once more. And God sent venomous snakes among the people. The bites were painful and deadly. Many died. The people came to Moses and confessed, "We sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. Please pray that the Lord will take the snakes away." And Moses, once again, interceded. God did not remove the snakes. Instead, he gave a command that seemed absurd. "Make a snake and put it up on a pole, anyone who is bitten can look at it and live." Moses made a bronze snake, put it on a pole, and lifted it up in the center of the camp. Anyone who was bitten and looked at the bronze snake survived. The cure wasn't in running from the problem, it was in facing it directly, with faith. Centuries later, Jesus would compare that very moment to his own crucifixion. The 40 years finally came to an end. An entire generation had perished in the wilderness. Of the 600,000 men who left Egypt, only 2 remained alive. Joshua and Caleb, the only 2 who, 40 years earlier, had declared, "We can take the land." The new generation, born in the desert and forged by sun and sand, now stood on the plains of Moab at the edge of the Jordan River. Across the water, the promised land finally waited. But Moses knew he would not cross that river with them. In the final days of his life, Moses gathered the entire people and delivered the most important speech in Israel's history. The book of Deuteronomy records every word. He reviewed the law, the commandments, the promises, and the failures of the past. He warned against idolatry. He blessed each of the 12 tribes. He declared Joshua as the new leader before the whole nation. And he spoke words that still echo today: "Choose life, so that you and your children may live, by loving the Lord and holding fast to Him." God called Moses to the top of Mount Nebo, on the ridge of Pisgah. From there he showed him all the land, Gilead as far as Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, all of Judah as far as the western sea, the Negev, and the valley of Jericho as far as Zor. And God said, "This is the land I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you will not cross over into it." Moses stood and looked. The promise fulfilled before him. Forever beyond his reach. Moses died there on the mountaintop, at 120 years old. His eyes were not weak and his strength had not faded. God buried him in a valley in Moab, and no one has ever found his grave. Israel mourned for 30 days. Then Joshua led the people across the Jordan River, which parted just as the Red Sea had, 40 years before. The promise was fulfilled. But the man who had spent his entire life pursuing it was left behind, reminding the world that even the most faithful can fall short.